we'll be doing the digestive system right now. First, we have the incisors. There we go. Then the canines and the premolars. And then we have the tongue and the hard palate with transverse ridges. And all of these will work together to physically break down food that enters the mouth. And then the parotid salivary gland is one of 3 salivary glands that releases saliva into the mouth. And saliva contains salivary amylase, antibodies, lysozymes, and mucus. The mucus will take the physically digestive food and make it into a bolus, which has greater surface area for the salivary amylase to work off of and start to chemically break down carbohydrates in the food. And then the lysozymes and antibodies will break down any bacteria or things in the food. Then we move over to the masseter that closes the mouth and assists in chewing, and then the digastric muscles will open the mouth. There we go. Those are some digastric muscles right there. And then we'll move over to the esophagus, which is the back opening over there. You put your probe in it real quick, please. There we go. Yeah, where he's putting his probe, that's where the esophagus is. And then during swallowing, the epiglottis, right there, will close the trachea off so that food and water doesn't get into the trachea and into the lungs. Then we go down through the esophagus, down through the chest, past the heart and the lungs and the liver, and go through the cardiac sphincter into the stomach right there. And the stomach is made up of 3 different muscle layers that also have internal muscular folds called rugae that will work to further physically break down food. Just getting a better angle here. You see the rugae right there. And then gastrin will be released in the presence of food or even at the thought of food, and that will produce that will trigger the release of gastric juice into the stomach to break down any proteins in the stomach. Hydrochloric acid will activate pepsinogen in the gastric juice, and the pepsin is what's created. That is what breaks down proteins. Then it becomes acidic chyme as it moves through the pyloric sphincter into the duodenum. And once in the duodenum, the pancreas will release right there. That's the pancreas. The pancreas will release pancreatic amylases, pancreatic peptidases, lipases, nucleases that all break down carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids respectively. And it also releases sodium bicarbonate, which will neutralize the hydrochloric acid from the stomach. But in order for lipids and lipases to work on the lipids, the liver must first produce bile. And this is the liver. It will produce bile, and when digestion is not occurring, bile will be stored in the gallbladder here, and then during digestion, bile will be transported through the common bile duct into the duodenum, and that emulsifies fats so that pancreatic lipases can get into the fatty acid chains and break them down chemically. Then as we move to the jejunum, which is the first half of the small intestine, all of these chemical reactions will continue to occur in the lumen of the small intestine, and then also brush border enzymes will continue to break down carbohydrates and proteins even further. And then the mesenteric blood vessels will take up all digested carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids, and they will transport them to the hepatic portal vein right there, and that goes into the liver. And then once nutrients are in the liver, they are processed. Some are packaged like carbohydrates, and others are sent straight back into the bloodstream. Fats, on the other hand, go through the lymphatic system before entering the liver. They go through the lacteal in the small intestine between mesenteric blood vessels. And then from the small intestine, or from the jejunum, we will move to the ileum, which is the second half of the small intestine. And from the ileum, we will move through the ileocecal valve into the cecum. This is the first part of the large intestine. And from the cecum, we will move up the ascending colon, through the transverse colon, which isn't very big on cats, and down the descending colon into the sigmoid colon, and from the sigmoid colon, it goes into the rectum. While in the colon, any water and ions that weren't absorbed will be absorbed into the bloodstream, and bacteria on the intestinal lining will make vitamins such as vitamin K, and then their byproducts are gases. Then, once it reaches the rectum, all of the leftover waste that couldn't be digested will be packed into feces and then expelled through the anal opening at an opportune time for the organism.